If you don't have water or a house, parenting programs aren't going to do you a lot of good.
Tonight, the focus on child welfare continues at the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls.
We certainly hope that the Premier will be available to meet with the chiefs.
First Nations in Quebec look to see what the level of cooperation will be from Canada's newest provincial premier.
We're going to make our, sincere effort to listen.
And the federal government lays out its process in a renewed effort to continue the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls continued its hearings on family and child welfare in Winnipeg. Today, commissioners heard further testimony from First Nations child advocate Cindy Blackstock.
Blackstock previously testified in Toronto during hearings on racism in June. Brittany Hobson has the story.
First Nations child advocate Cindy Blackstock was at the center of Wednesday's hearings on family and child welfare, where she told commissioners provincial and territorial governments aren't doing enough to protect Indigenous children.
If the provinces aren't adopting the full compliant definition, then they aren't really accepting their responsibility to provide substantive equality level services to women and girls throughout their lifespan.
Blackstock was referring to the full implementation of Jordan's principle, which would see Indigenous children get full access to government services whether living on or off reserve. She said failing to follow the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ruling is resulting in the overrepresentation of Indigenous kids in care, and in turn, putting them at a higher risk of becoming a statistic.
These children often have traumatic experiences before they come into care, but then often in the care system, because it's so under-resourced, those kids have additional traumas, which predispose them to other types of risks. Risks of substance misuse, risks of juvenile justice, and that kind of involvement.
Blackstock said it's not enough to increase funding. Governments must address the root issues.
If you don't have water or a house, parenting programs aren't going to do you a lot of good. Unless we create equity across all those dimensions, the overrepresentation is going to continue.
Earlier this year, the CHRT issued its 5th non-compliance order against Canada. Blackstock feels it's not just up to Ottawa to implement. Provincial governments need to play a role too.
If that solution, the government agrees it's a good solution, they still don't implement it, and you've tried everything, I think that, yeah, you should go to litigation, because the bottom line is that kids should come first.
Hearings continue in Winnipeg on Thursday. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
An update now on Mary Yellowback. Yellowback came to Winnipeg from the remote flying community of God's Lake in northern Manitoba for medical appointments. Her body was found quite a distance from where she was last seen in downtown Winnipeg. CTV's Josh Crabb reports.
33-year-old Mary Yellowback was married with 6 children. She was a hockey player and home care worker from Mantissippi Cree Nation, described as a happy-go-lucky person. Her mother and father, Hagar and Rex Ross, are now left looking for answers following what they call the unimaginable circumstances surrounding their daughter's death.
It's tragic. It's a tragic event.
Yellowback was found dead Friday night by workers at Cascades Recovery in Omens Creek Industrial Park. Her body mixed in with materials picked up by the recycling company from various locations across the city.
I have no information in terms of how she was transported to the recycling center at this point.
Winnipeg police believe Yellowback may have been transported to the recycling depot during the company's collection process. Officers say Yellowback was last seen downtown Thursday night wearing a gray hoodie with a red R on the front. Police haven't ruled her death a homicide.
At this time, it is classified as suspicious.
News of Yellowback's death comes as the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women holds hearings in Winnipeg. Commissioner Michelle Audette says she heard about the discovery of a body on her way to Winnipeg and immediately thought a family was suffering.
We had a moment of silence. And again, that same thought came and said, why? Why it's still happening every week.
Family members last heard from Yellowback on Wednesday. Despite the awful circumstances under which her body was discovered, Rex Ross feels thankful his daughter was found. because he knows many others are still searching for loved ones.
If it was on a regular pin on the gray ones, he could have gone, they could have transported that body to the main garbage dump. But we're so fortunate.
Josh Crabb, CTV News, Winnipeg.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptn news. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news.
A wind of change blew across Quebec during the provincial elections, which were held earlier this week. For the first time in 50 years, neither the Liberals or the Parti Québécois are in power. Danielle Rochette reports.
François Legault from Coalition Avenir Québec, or CAQ, will be the Quebec's 32nd premier. Legault's party won with a stunning 74 seats in the Quebec National Assembly. His decisive victory gave the Liberal Party and the Parti Québécois the worst results of their history. In his victory speech, he stressed his intention to govern for all Quebecers.
Let's work together to make Quebec stronger within Canada, and I want to assure you that my government will be your government.
In Legault's speech, not a word was said about Indigenous people, but a letter sent by the CAQ to the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec and Labrador expressed some commitments.
The letter clearly stated the intentions of the CAQ to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but it didn't go into detail as we had requested that the National Assembly would follow suit with the comments in maybe considering a bill that would guide the measures from this government.
Picard also reiterated the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec and Labrador's intention to call upon the new government within 100 days of its formation to a formal meeting with all First Nations chiefs.
We have a Chiefs Assembly scheduled for mid-November. We certainly hope that the Premier will be available to meet with the chiefs, at least the first meeting, and then from there we'll see, where that takes us.
But for Picard, there's an issue that will be very high on the agenda, and it's all about titles, rights, and economy of First Nation for First Nations.
That area is very broad. It touches on lands and resources. It touches on development. It touches on labor as well.
Quebec Indigenous people will also be able to count on Quebec Solidaire, a party who managed to triple their seats at the National Assembly. In her speech, Manon Massé highlights the importance of Indigenous people and their rights in the province of Quebec.
Et ce soir, je vous annonce d'entrée de jeu que je vais continuer à garder le dossier des Autochtones parce que je trouve ça majeur. Je ne sais pas pourquoi, mais moi, négocier de nation en nation, ça ne me fait pas peur.
The CAQ's victory leaves many Indigenous people wondering, will this new government bring positive changes for them? But already, Premier Legault contacted the Regional Chief Picard today to start the conversation. Danielle Rochette, APTN National News, Montreal.
Moving forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, that's coming up after the break.
But first, a look at tomorrow's weather. Starting on the East Coast, 22 above and rain for Charlottetown and Fredericton, 20 and rain for Halifax, 15 with showers in Happy Valley Goose Bay, rain, and 11 for Nain, 18 and rain for St. Joliet, 13 and rain for Chibougamau, 17 with rain in London, 19 and showers in Toronto, sunny skies and 8 above for Thunder Bay, snow and +5 for Sioux Lookout. Over to northern Manitoba, +4 and sunny for Norway House and God's Lake, -1 in Puckatawagan, +6 and sunny for Gimli, Winnipeg, Brandon, and Dauphin. Over to Saskatchewan, 4 with the sun out in Regina and Yorkton, Rain and +4 for Swift Current, Saskatoon, and North Battleford. -2 under sunny skies for Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Welcome back. The federal government has announced its next steps in moving forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. According to the Minister of Natural Resources, they won't cut corners in getting it right. Here's Annette Francis.
The Minister of Natural Resources got right to the point at the early morning press conference.
We have decided to follow the guidance from the Federal Court of Appeal. We believe that we can and must move forward by engaging in a meaningful and focused consultation with Indigenous groups on the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion Project.
Last month, the Federal Court of Appeal found consultation with Indigenous communities was not robust enough for the Trans Mountain Pipeline approval to be valid. To get it right, Minister Sohi announced his government will reinitiate the consultation process. It will more than double the consultation teams with expertise from across Canada. Government representatives will have a clear mandate.
That our government has appointed former Supreme Court of Canada Justice, the Honorable Frank Iacobucci, as federal representative to oversee the consultation process. He will initially provide advice on designing the process and will then oversee it to ensure the Indigenous consultations are meaningful and comply with the direction given by the Federal Court of Appeal.
When asked if First Nations along the pipeline route would have the right to consent or not to the project, the minister says this.
We're going to make our sincere effort to listen, consult, and offer accommodation where those accommodations are possible. But we also understand that there might be groups that will still oppose this project. That's fine, because that's the right to do so. But that does not mean that if we fulfill our constitutional obligation, that those groups may have a veto to stop this project.
NDP MP Romeo Saganash took the opportunity to question that approach in the House of Commons.
How can the Prime Minister claim that he will consult again when he has repeatedly said in this House that this project will be built no matter what? Doesn't the Prime Minister realize that he's in fact totally abdicating on his constitutional duty to consult and accommodate Indigenous peoples and obtain their consent?
According to Minister Sohi, there will be no timeline for the consultation process. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
There's good news for people who want to learn a trade in BC. That's because a training facility for Indigenous people, which has already taught trades to hundreds of men and women, is expanding. APTN's Tina House has the details from North Vancouver.
Today, students from all across BC are learning carpentry level 1.
So you just put this guard on here, then you just set it to the depth that you want.
Priscilla Fraser is from the Squamish Nation. She just started 2 weeks ago and says that she wants a better job with better pay. That's why she's here.
It's a big industry, and as you can see on the North Shore here, the construction business has been booming. So they have like a whole bunch of townhouses and a whole bunch of other construction going up. So I think it'll benefit a lot of the nation, Aboriginal people, to get in the trade center.
Kelseelam is a band counselor and spokesperson with the Squamish Nation. He says there are a lot of opportunities for Indigenous people in the trades.
We have a lot of partnerships as a nation with companies that are doing business with our nation, and so we often negotiate for employment opportunities for our members, as well as capacity development for training for those members to be able to get those jobs.
Since it started in 2004, 525 apprentices and 400 skilled construction trades workers have graduated. This program also includes other programs to help ensure success, including upgrading a food program and training allowances.
It's not just about trades training, but there's also other kinds of services that get tied into that, whether it's health, mental health, wellness, and those types of things, in addition to the actual direct training that they're receiving for trades.
This newly expanded space will allow for more training and more students. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
Manitoba MLAs have just gotten back from their summer vacations, but they were not greeted with open arms. Manitoba's skilled trade workers braved the snow and rain to protest against Bill 28 on the front steps of the Manitoba legislature. They say if the bill is passed, project labor agreements will be banned. Manitoba Building Trades CEO Sudhir Sandhu says the agreements help construction projects get to the populations that face the most barriers entering the workplace: women, northern communities, and Indigenous peoples.
Let's raise our voices. Let's tell Premier Brian Pallister one more time, Bill 28's got to go. Stop Bill 28. We are not going to stand for that treatment of Manitoba's hardworking men and women, and we will show up again and again until Bill 28 is withdrawn.
Today was the season premiere for APTN In Focus. I talked to Indigenous youth leaders about what issues are most important to them. Here's some of their biggest concerns.
Maybe for the youth, I think housing would be a priority for youth. They have some safe, affordable housing options for our youth. That'd be number one. Number two, having some mentorship and some employment opportunities. And number three, just having representation in those opportunities, right? Seeing people from the community and look up to them and be like, I can do that, and I can be that leader, the next leader.
In terms of child and family services, we see a lot of not working with the families. So I think looking at different approaches to the child welfare system and being able to bring in those supports to communities. And then addictions and treatment. I see a lot of barriers and gaps that exist within that system, not only for youth, but also for adults. So just addressing those kind of issues. And then obviously sexual exploitation is my biggest focus in life right now.
Education. In Canada, I feel like a lot of people, including our own people, there isn't a lot of education surrounding our histories, and also just education on reserves are usually lacking. They usually isn't high schools. Kids have to leave to go to school, and that puts them in dangerous situations.
Priority that I would like to see is engaging young people on this rights and recognition framework, this legal framework that's going on. Young people are so focused on surviving day to day that they don't have the time to engage in government and what is going on above their heads.
Place we can be safe, because in the prairies or in Toronto, wherever you are in this country, there's very few places we can go to be safe, to be welcomed, to be free.
With more than 630 First Nations, 2 Métis and 4 Inuit territories spread out over thousands of kilometers, APTN News is trying to bring everyone just a little closer. And we've partnered with Google to present Google Bulletin. It's your gateway to write about anything that's happening in your community. Just contact us and we'll send you a unique code. The rest is up to you. Post pictures, write a story, or report about anything you want. Google Bulletin puts the news in your hands, and all you need is a smartphone. Here's how to get your unique code. Email your name and community to bulletin@aptn.ca. Go to our APTN website, aptnnews.ca/bulletin.
A park that just used to be an old fountain with no connection to the community is now home to public art created by Winnipeg's Indigenous community.
That story is coming up after the break, but first, here's the rest of Thursday's weather forecasts. Picking back up in northern Alberta, 6 above for Peace River, rain and sunny skies for Grand Prairie. Snow and +5 for Medicine Hat, snow and 4 above for Lethbridge, +2 and snow in Calgary. Sunny skies for Campbell River and 13, 14 under the sun in Bella Coola, 11 and sunny for Smithers, Dease Lake at 8 and sunny skies. in the Yukon. 8 as well for Mayo with the sun out. 10 above in Beaver Creek under the sun. In NWT, 0 and sunny for Wrigley and Norman Wells. -3 under the sun in Yellowknife. -8 and snow for Sax Harbor. -6 and snow for Paulatuck. -1 in Chesterfield with snow. -3 under sunny skies for Whale Cove. 7 below for Cambridge Bay. -6 in Resolute. +6 in Pangertown. Welcome back. An old park is being transformed into something new in downtown Winnipeg. 4 Indigenous artists have each designed their own pieces that they hope will make a bold statement in the center of the city with the largest urban Indigenous population in Canada. Daryl Stranger has more.
Right next to the APTN World Headquarters here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, lies Air Canada Park. The park used to just be an old fountain with no connection to the community. Now, the park is home to a public art project from the Winnipeg Arts Council dubbed This Place. The grand opening showcased sculptures by 4 Indigenous artists, free food, and live performances. The event drew a crowd. The 4 works complement each other. They are anti-monuments, but they honor the ancestors and spur discussion around Indigenous experiences on this land. The stack of school chairs symbolizes the failed attempts to de-educate and assimilate us. They are overturned to signify the time of being told is over. The square dancers expresses the traditional dance of the Métis people, a symbol of their resilience and optimism during Canada's formative years. Roland Soyer created this piece. She says this 2-headed coin captures the ambivalence of Treaty 1 and hopes the park sheds light on Indigenous issues.
This kind of anchors everything. So you have 4 artists, 4 major artworks dealing about the social, political, and cultural issues of Indigenous people today.
Electrical currents raises awareness about the impacts of hydroelectric development in the north and the impact it has on the Métis and First Nation communities. Julie Nagam spoke about her art and the discussion she hopes it brings.
I think that that's the interesting thing about public art is that it actually sparks kind of difficult dialogues in the public space, and you get the opportunity for people to be more aware of issues that they wouldn't otherwise be aware of.
Mayor Brian Bowman is Métis. He's also in the middle of a city election campaign.
We want all Winnipeggers and visitors to be very proud of our Indigenous heritage and our Indigenous future here in Winnipeg, and through art we can share our story with the world and with each other, so it's incredibly important.
These works of art are permanent, and they will forever remind us of the importance of the land they sit on and the significance of the Indigenous culture, people, and way of life. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Really nice looking out there in the park now.
It is very nice now.
That's your APTN National News for this Wednesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca.
That's where you can also watch the full episode of today's live edition of In Focus, where we put youth leaders in focus. It was a great discussion with great ideas, so tune in. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a good night.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.